Hi, first grade. So today we are going to be talking about plurals. So when we have nouns, when we have a singular noun, that means that there's just one. And then when we have a plural, that means that there's more than one. So two or more. So, for example, the word toy. If we have just one toy, then it's singular because we have one single toy. But let's say I got another toy for my birthday and now I have two toys. So we add an S. Toys. We've got two or more. Or let's look at my marker. I've got one singular marker. But I'm going to grab a handful of markers out of my box. And now instead of a marker, I have markers. It's plural. I have more than one. So we are going to be changing some of our singular words into plural. So we've got some singular nouns. We're going to change them into plural nouns. But we're going to talk about 3 different rules for changing these singular nouns into plural nouns. So rule number 1. When we have a word that ends in a consonant Y, so the line here represents a consonant letter and a Y, then that consonant becomes an I, and then we add an ES. So then our rule number 2, which is over here, says that when we have an X, Z, S, CH, or SH, then we add an ES after those letters to make it a plural. And our rule number 3, which is over here, says everything else, so if it doesn't end in a consonant Y or in an X, Z, S, CH, or SH, then it just ends in an S to make it a plural. So let's work through some of these words together. Our first word is toy. Okay, so it ends with a Y, but is that a consonant? Is O a consonant? O is a vowel. Let's review our vowels really quick. So our vowels are, and I'll write them up here, A, E, I, O, and U. So since that's a vowel and it's not a consonant, then it doesn't apply to rule number 1, doesn't apply to rule number 2, which means it must be rule number 3. So toy, rule number 3 says we're just going to add an S. So toy becomes toys. And that was rule number 3. So we'll write 3. Let's look at our next word, table. So table ends in an E. Okay, so it's not going to be rule number 1. It's not any of these letters, so it's not rule number 2, which means it's rule number 3. So it ends in a S. So table becomes tables, and that's rule number 3. Dress. Okay, this one looks a little different. So this one ends with an SS, dress. So, since it ends in an S, that means we just add an ES. So, dress becomes dresses. Dresses. So let's listen to that really quick. So toys, tables, dresses. So when we have to apply rule number 2 and we add an ES, instead of just an S sound, sometimes it sounds more like a is sound. dresses. But we know that it's plural, so it's more than one dress. Let's look at our next one. Puppy. So puppy ends in a Y, okay? So let's look at the letter before it. P. Is P a vowel or a consonant? Well, here's our vowels. So it's not a vowel, which means it must be a consonant. So let's look at rule number 1. Rule number 1 says if it ends with a consonant Y, then the Y becomes an I, and we add ES. So puppy becomes we change the Y to an I, and then we add ES. Puppies. So now we have more than one puppy. Let's look at our next word. Librarian. Librarian ends with an N, so we know it doesn't apply to rule number 1. It doesn't end in an X, Z, S, CH, or SH, so we don't do rule number 2, which means it's everything else, and it ends in an S. So all we're going to do is add an S to the end of our word. So librarian becomes librarians. You just add an S. Our next word is bench. Ends in a CH. Not rule number 1. Oh, CH. That means we're going to add an ES after the CH. So bench becomes benches. And remember, instead of just the S sound at the end, it sounds more like is. Benches. Benches. One bench, singular. 2 or more benches. And our last word is army. So army ends in a Y. So let's check up here. Is it a consonant Y? We've got an M. Is M a consonant or a vowel? Well, let's check our vowels again. We've got A, E, I, O, U. So it's a consonant, which means the Y becomes an I, and then we add ES. So army becomes armies. So let's review our rules one more time. Rule number 1, if it ends with a consonant and a Y, we change the Y to an I and it becomes ES. Rule number 2, if the word ends in an X, Z, S, CH, or SH, then we add an ES to the end of that word. And remember, that one sounds like a is sound. And then rule number 3, everything else, we just add an S to the end of the word. And singular means that we have one, and then plural means that we have 2 or more. So toy became toys, table became tables, dress became dresses, puppy became puppies, librarian became librarians, bench became benches, and army became armies. Now I want you to try this on your own.